We've already been discussing some of these latest immigration statistics that have come out. Let's talk right now about them to Ben Habib. He's former MEP and former Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Good morning to you, Ben.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Latest immigration stats. I mean, things we always know they're bad news. They're never good news, are they? Let me run through them very quickly. There were 44,000 what we call now irregular arrivals. Illegal immigrants, 44,000 illegal immigrants detected in the whole year of 2024. It's up a fifth on the previous year. 37,000 of those were on small boats. Bearing in mind, by the way, we don't catch all of these people. Not everyone is identified. 108,000 people claimed asylum in 2024. 18% more than the year before, and it's even higher than the peak we had in 2022. Asylum seekers in hotels, well, the peak was back in 2023 when we had 56,000, but it then went down. It's gone back up again. 38,000 in December in last year. That's 2,500 more than were in July, when Labour came in saying they were going to move people out of those hotels. So we've got a huge number of these people. They're here illegally. We're paying for them. We're not getting rid of them. We're barely deporting. There were 8,200 enforced returns the whole of last year, an increase of 28% in the year before, but just 8,200, largely Albanians. I mean, 25,000 voluntary returns. We're still, by the way, giving those people £3,000 for the privilege of putting them on a plane and a free passage home. Your reaction to the state of those statistics?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about the way they publish the statistics, other than regarding them as irregular rather than illegal, is that they don't actually publish the number of asylum applications that have been granted. And I've been trying to look at these numbers and figure that out. And I think I come to an estimate, but it's not entirely clear. Around 65 to 70,000 people were granted asylum last year. And it seems to me that even though there's the reason there's a reduction in those waiting for an initial response to their asylum applications is even though there haven't been many deportations, is because the Labour government is effectively speeding people through the asylum process.
And often they're not actually granted asylum, but they're granted indefinite leave to stay.
To remain.
Which is so strange. So they haven't been given asylum, they're just here. And they're just basically here in the country forever. We can't get rid of them. Even as we've discovered in recent weeks, they commit a horrific crime, go to prison, and then apparently they've got a right to a family life because they got an Aunt Elsa somewhere in Cleethorpes.
Absolutely. And so what's very difficult to glean from the way the government is handling this is, first of all, the economic damage that's being done, because they try and get them out of hotels. Even, the hotel damage is massive. That's about 8 billion a year by my estimates it costs. But the minute you grant them asylum, of course, these are they're not even low skilled. I'd say most people coming across are unskilled. The vast majority of people coming across are single men from Afghanistan. Goodness knows what they have to offer to the cultural or economic fabric of the United Kingdom.
I think you'll find they're all engineers and brain surgeons if you check more closely, Ben.
And so my view is, without evidence to prove it, is they're moving from hotels to our benefit system, and they're being hidden. And last time I looked at the figures, we've got about 1.5 million people of foreign nationality on benefits in the UK, costing us around 10 billion a year. You add that to the 8 billion that we're spending on people in hotels, you're up to 20, probably north of that, Julia, because, these are government figures that we're working on. And as you said, we don't really know, do we? And everything is going to be a lot worse than what they tell us. You're talking about tens of billions of pounds being spent on people who are here illegally, criminals. And we've got to change the way we deal with this. We've got to. You and I had a famous discussion, I think, on the 23rd of April in 2024, and we can have that discussion again. But, we've got to enforce our borders. And then when people do break through whatever enforcement procedures we've got to protect the United Kingdom, we've got to have a robust mechanism by which they are detained. Not put in hotels, detained, imprisoned, in other words, and then deported wherever possible. And if they're not capable of being deported, then they must remain in prison. They are criminals. I thought it was brilliant the other day at a congressional hearing. A senator was asked, how many of the illegal migrants were criminals. He said, well, all of them. because they all came here illegally.
Yeah, no, I think that was, that was a
mindset.
White House press conference, and the press secretary said,
Yeah,
they're all illegal.
Right.
They're all illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all criminal. I don't understand. I mean, again, using this term irregular, and again, we know there's lots of evidence that actually an awful lot of the people who are asylum seekers were told how they're coping on this pittance of, whatever it is, a few quid a week on top of their room and board. But actually, a lot of them are working in the black economy, and then they get leave to remain. They carry on working the black economy whilst also claiming benefits. Again, they're undercutting.
Absolutely.
They're undercutting other low-skilled workers who born and bred here who are trying to make ends meet because they were, why would you hire the legal worker when you can hire the illegal worker for half the cost? This is the thing. There still doesn't seem to be any will to deal with this. I mean, I know, the Tories talk a good game. Labour even talking a good game, probably against the wishes of a lot of their MPs and their supporters who apparently think we should have no borders whatsoever and everyone should come on in the waters lovely. But no one seems to ever get a grip on this.
No, so we have at least two bits of legislation that I think make life very, very difficult for the United Kingdom. The first is the Equalities Act, and the other is the Human Rights Act, which takes into our body of law the European Convention of Human Rights and makes the European Court the superior body for human rights adjudications in the United Kingdom. And putting these two bits of legislation together, we are unable effectively to enforce our borders, to detain and then deport because of the Human Rights Act. And because of the Equalities Act, we actually wrap these people in a protected blanket. We give them protected status and we promote them through our society.
But I disagree with you because neither of those laws in any way, resting on Article 8, the right to a family life and to privacy, in no way, and I've read it out on air earlier this week, the first thing, right to family life, it will not be infringed by the state unless, and it gives a whole litany of reasons why why it could be, we send people to prison. That deprives them of their family life, for goodness sake. But basically, it's activist judges. I mean, we've got the same thing going on in America with a democratically elected president using executive orders, the powers that he has got within the US Constitution to enact certain things, and he's being stopped at all counts. People, whether staff work from home, whether he's trying to cut budgets and things, by activist judges. Now, America does have, almost by the Constitution, activist political judges. But if you're in this country, if you as a government cannot make a policy, you cannot enforce a policy because of an activist judge completely, I would say, not interpreting but misinterpreting the laws as they stand and not applying them accurately, then I'm afraid we need to get rid of those judges and people sitting on those tribunals. We need a massive clean out of those people. Yeah,
though I think we have to revoke. We've got to set aside the Equalities Act and the Human Rights Act. They've got to go. The Human Rights Act, this is developing the conversation on a bit, but the Human Rights Act has now substituted British culture. When people say, well, what are your values? They quote the Human Rights Act back at me. That's not our culture. No. That's a slight digression. But you see, it's hijacked the entire debate. And, we had that example the other day of a Zimbabwean man who couldn't be sent, a paedophile, I think, who couldn't be sent back to Zimbabwe because it would prohibit him from having a family life in the United Kingdom because he had children here. I mean, it's an absolute absurdity. Or the Albanian whose child couldn't eat Albanian chicken nuggets. Yeah, apparently. Well, we don't know for sure. They just suspected. Well, again, we've also got another story. We've barely got any time here, but dozens of mostly African men, homeless migrants, were basically got to set up a tent camp for a year in Manchester city centre. They were finally evicted by the authorities from their tent village, and they basically just moved 150 yards down the road to create a new sort of shanty village outside the Midland Hotel, a hotel I know well, and basically they literally just picked up their tents and moved along. We cannot, I mean, Paris has got this as well. You simply cannot have a situation where you've got people just setting up camp in the streets, in parks, on the pavements, in our major cities and towns. It's just got to stop. I mean, we just look like third world banana republics. We are turning into a third world country.
We are.
That is exactly where we're going, economically, culturally, constitutionally, even democratically, constitutionally, as I mentioned. We're having to shut down free speech in order to tolerate or, make sure that society tolerates with the assault that's being perpetrated against it.
We ain't tolerating it. We ain't tolerating it. I could talk to you for so long, much longer. Come back on again next week. We'll have a longer chat. Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK,